Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey there.
Oh, hey.
Don't try to hey me in some sexy voice. All right, so we just had a TikTok moment here in the office. Abby is super happy right now because she just got her hair did and she has these beautiful highlights and she's looking so good. And, you know, there's been times historically in the past, if her hair didn't come out well, she wasn't the happiest. She didn't emote the greatest emotions from
I didn't broadcast cheer.
No, it was not broadcasting cheer. So she comes in the office and she's like, I love how I feel. And she's standing here with these beautiful, lovely locks and this nice.
Well, it's also because when they do your hair, sometimes it looks so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was done fantastically. And so you're just standing there enjoying yourself and your sexy little belly button shirt. And I'm making comments on how sexy you are. And you're like, I know. And then all of a sudden she's like, it just stares at me. I was like, how is this not literally comedy from TikTok?
It was literally comedy.
Hot chick stands there looking sexy and then rips one.
Listen, it's because of the medicine I just took for my body.
Is that the medicine's fault?
Yeah. It literally
that
is.
You smell like a filthy pig.
I don't smell like a filthy pig.
I joke. Recently, we were reviewed as quirky, fun, and intelligent.
We were?
Mm-hmm. But they threw in the word quirky, which I think would reference that type of conversation.
Oh, I was thinking more of I get all these people that are like, I really like your podcast, except sometimes you're so crude. I'm like, I think we're not that crude.
Yeah. We're actually really tame.
I think we're pretty neutral.
Yeah, especially on this podcast.
Have you ever heard any real people before?
Mm-hmm.
Or TV?
Have you ever heard me when I'm not on the podcast?
People are like, no, how would we do that?
I would be picketed.
You would be picketed.
Hey, so today, speaking of emoting and emotions... We're going to talk about a subject that is going to change some people's lives. We're going to turn your life upside down in the best of ways. And you're going to be like, I understand myself for the first time.
I'm not crazy. That's what happened when I learned.
Although you still can be crazy and still this can be true.
Are you saying that because I'm still crazy?
Yes.
Oh.
Burn. Oh, on fire today. Hey, so we're going to talk about empaths.
We're going to talk about, and that is a great word for it, but I also like to call them feelers.
Feelers. The people are all feeler. They have feelings. They're feeling the people around them.
Yeah.
They're aware of their environment.
Yeah, they're picking up on the energy and atmosphere of what's happening around them. I will say, I didn't know I was an empath or a feeler.
Yeah.
For years. It wasn't until I had a friend who was very much had more self-awareness than me. Mm-hmm. And she started talking about it and I started recognizing that it was really true. And so when we talk about being a feeler, it's basically, if you think everybody is broadcasting emotions.
Yep. And you so happen to be able to feel the frequency of that emotion. Mm-hmm. So somehow your world is like, I don't know what's happening, but things feel horrible right now.
Yeah.
What is this? Now, I'm going to give a really quick story to kind of like tee us off.
Okay.
Tee us up for it.
I don't know what that hand motion was.
That was me playing golf with a tee. Okay. So I had a client come into me one day and they were saying, they were talking about this deep hidden piece of shame that they had about their childhood. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? What is this big thing? They're like, it's a secret. I've never told anyone. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be crazy. They're so intense about this. Mm-hmm. And then they began to share about how they went to a school, and the school that they went to, no other person from that school lived in a certain neighborhood that they lived in. Okay. They lived in this other neighborhood. It wasn't the same way everyone else in the school.
Wasn't a schmancy neighborhood?
No, it wasn't a bad neighborhood either. It just wasn't.
It was neutral?
It was neutral. Yes. So they didn't. So they're talking about how they didn't want to bring anyone to their home growing up as a kid because then they would find out where they lived. Again, very neutral place, nothing bad about it. And I was like, so this is your debilitating, like, hidden shame secret, huh? And I didn't,
oh, wait, that was it.
That was it.
That was I thought you said like they had some crazy thing.
No, here's where this all plays together. So I'm investigating this story, and their whole life, they're like, they couldn't tell their spouse about it. About this.
That they lived in this separate place.
In this separate place that wasn't as great as where everyone else lived, apparently. And so as we start digging.
I hate shame.
As we start digging in their story, I asked them the
Screw
question.
You, shame.
Because I knew some history about their parents, and one of the parents happened to be influential in some ways, but not fully influential. And then the other parent wasn't.
Medium influential.
Well, it was like...
This is great. They live in a neutral place and they're medium influential.
Let me tell a story. So, but there was something about... I could perceive that one of the parents had a personal shame about not being enough.
Right.
So I asked the question, what do you think this other parent felt about living there?
Right. Like, it's not the status. I'm not enough to live in this other place.
And they sat there for a second and they're like, oh my gosh, that was their complete, I would hear them argue and this language would come out about where they lived. And occasionally, it was just a few times, but I could always feel, oh my gosh, I've been feeling them my entire life. I didn't have a problem growing up there. I loved growing up there. And there was this huge weight that sat on their shoulders their entire life because they felt someone else and they took it on as their own reality.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know that this happened for me in my childhood. Now, granted, my mom literally didn't have emotional boundaries with me. So she taught me how to be, and I think there's different levels of feelers. And my mom literally taught me, she groomed me to feel her emotions with her. So there wasn't, but I remember I thought for years that I had been molested.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because I had all of the, my dad's a counselor and I know a lot about, I was in counseling at a young age because my family was crazy. But, so what am I thinking?
Attuned to your mom?
Yeah. So I knew all of the symptoms of being molested and all of the reactions of it. And I was like, I check off all of these boxes, but I don't have any memories of being molested. And I don't have anything that I'm scared of facing or whatever. Yeah. And I'd wrestle with that for years. I was like, where does this man hatred come from? Where does this there are so many things that I had. And so it wasn't till years later when I recognized that I was a feeler, I was like, oh, my mom had some painful things happen with men. She was molested and there was lots of painful stories in her past that she never was able to work through. She was still stuck in the trauma of. And I recognized I just picked up that feeling of trauma from men. I just picked that up and it became mine. Yeah. Because I was a feeler and I was feeling her all the time. And I didn't know how to separate my emotions from her emotions because I didn't know there was such thing as feeling other people. But this is we've used two bad stories, but I want to say this is a positive thing too. When you go to a football game or a baseball game and you just love the energy in the place, you're feeling other people. Or if you're around somebody, this happens a lot with Justin. He comes and he's in a playful mood and he's so happy and I can literally feel his presence buoy the energy in the room.
Even on that note, I will go into circumstances where people have heightened anxieties about stuff. And I know it before they say a word, I can feel their intense anxiety about their life or about a circumstance. And I have learned how to be very much a gatekeeper of my own soul. So I can go,
I like that.
That is your anxiety. I'm not going to enter into that, but I'm going to actually posture myself in a place of peace. And so I've gone into full blown, like, people duking it out, fights and stuff. I've walked up and been like, hi.
Wait, tell a story. It's a good story.
I'll use an example real quick. I watched a lady walking down the side of the road and a guy's driving next to her screaming at her. They're both older people. She's walking her dog. And apparently story was, she was allowing her dog to take a crap on his lawn every day consistently. And he'd confronted her and now he's just like lost his mind, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just know this guy's irate at this woman and I'm like, do I need to go protect her? So I walk out just patiently and I walk over to the two of them and I go, excuse me. And we're talking, he's screaming his head off.
Yeah.
Hi. What's happening here right now? And I'm just like full peace. I'm not scared that he's going to do anything to me. I'm rested.
But you are intentionally being aware that you have an emotion you can broadcast.
Yes, I have an emotion I can broadcast and I'm going to let him feel the reality of my peace.
So you like come in with like, I have authority to bring just like everyone has a frequency they can release. I can release my peace.
So I can either steward thoughts of horribleness inside of myself, engaging anxiety in my own soul, which will bring that energy to it, or I bring the peace and they're not even aware of it. I'm just like, hi, how are you guys doing here? What's happening? Let's talk about this. What did she do? And all of a sudden he begins to come down from where he's at and he begins to match me. And then all of a sudden he tells me the whole story and he looks like tears start coming up in his eyes because he's felt so powerless. I said, I bet you felt really powerless to her doing that with her dog. Yeah, I don't want to yell. And I'm like, yes, because I know the woman, she's passed by our yard and lets her dog poop in our yard all the time too. So
she's the worst.
She's a terrible human being. No. But what I watched is I got to facilitate an emotional space. And once he left, I said, all right, it's time for you to go. And I'll continue my conversation with her. And she had heightened anxiety about it. And I brought her down. I said, do you think you got angry and felt like you were justified in letting that dog poop in his yard all the time? Yes. Yes. Because I did it once and he was a jerk when I did it when the dog happened the first time. So I decided I was just going to keep letting my dog do it.
That's hysterical.
But I totally reestablished like a sense of peace.
Right.
And so one of the things that we think is that all of our power is within an external action. But actually there's a couple of conversations that are going to be happening here today. But one of them happens to be our power starts at an internal place.
Yes.
But first we have to be aware that we are emoters. We are emitting something. And we have to also be aware that we are feeling something. And that self-awareness is so key. Most people are not self-aware of what's happening. They don't have a consistent plumb line. So can I talk about a plumb line for a second?
Please do.
So I have what I call a plumb line, and that's my general normal that I have inside of my life. So I know where my fears and my anxieties are and what would provoke them. And I know some of my past things that are painful. I know my trigger points. So when I walk into a situation, I can go, oh, this is actually me. I'm being triggered because of this action. It's reminding me of my childhood. I've developed enough self-awareness that now I have a plumb line of what is usually my mechanics for function.
Right. How do I think? How do I feel?
What are my top emotions I usually live out of?
What are my triggers? So we call that self-awareness.
Self-awareness. So I'm able to come into circumstances with said self-awareness. And a lot of people, again, you don't have self-awareness, so you don't have your plumb line.
So then you can't tell.
So you can't tell, is this me? Is this someone else? And so when we have conversations about being an empath or being a feeler, feeling the environment around you, a lot of people are like, oh, what is me? Is it just them? You know, and they go on witch hunts and stuff like that.
And then they're like, if I'm feeling sad, it's definitely your fault. It's like blaming everyone for anything that's painful.
So now let me say this. People who are pain avoiders or emotion avoiders will now take a conversation like this and utilize it to give a reason why it's not their feelings and why they don't have to do investigations. So part of this talk is we don't want you to walk away from this going, well, everyone else is the problem. We want you to walk away from this conversation with more self-awareness.
Yes.
And a sense of personal empowerment.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that you're talking about in a plumb line is like, so when you know who you are normally and what your normal is, you can often then recognize when something doesn't feel right. So like this happened the other day. Pizzi was telling me about a fight that she and her husband were in. And she was like, this doesn't feel like how we fight.
Right. This feels very different from the way that we argue or respond.
Yeah. Like we are both level 10 triggered and we cannot get it under control. And this feels weird. So all they did is they just stopped the fight and then moved to a different location or waited till a different time to finish it. And it wasn't even, there was an awareness. They began to pray and actually get reconnected and change the atmosphere that they were in before they then worked through things. And then it was like, oh, okay, easy. And that's happened to us before when we've just been in locations.
I want you to use an example of some time that maybe that's happened between us.
Well, you know what something is interesting is, so me and you are both feelers. I would say it affects me more than it affects you, but I think we're both empaths.
Yeah. I think when you say effects, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I would say that I feel equally, but I think I have an ability to create a distance with it differently.
You disassociate better.
Yeah, I'm
in
able
a healthy way.
Yeah, I think a little bit. I have a little bit better ability to go. That's not me, and I can go sit in peace over here on this.
Yeah, you also don't have crazy hormones, but this isn't a competition. I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. That's funny. I was thinking about how we both set a limit on how many marriages that we help people with in our business. Because when we both were dealing with marriages, because we'd get in sessions and they are just going at each other. And there's that energy of hatred and bitterness and blame and victim mentality, all of the stuff that shows up in everybody's fights. And you could feel it actually begin to affect how we related.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where there's all different things you can, I can feel people that I'm with. I can feel things from TV shows.
What about locations that you've any experiences we've had in locations? Is
well, like one things I would say is sometimes we'll get in a fight and if we just move to a different location, it like changes the energy.
Yeah.
And then we're able like, oh, we're going to go finish this at the office. Let's talk through things there. Or, oh, we're going to go for a walk and we're going to come back. There's almost this thing that can happen where you can get into a role of bad energy. And when I mean role, I mean like momentum picks up. I like to call it kind of the mob mentality where you'll notice it on like social media. Like one person will banter and then the other the attack and the other person will attack back
and get kind of charged and then it starts getting.
And you know it because if you've ever made the comment, you're feeling charged.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, all these other people are feeling charged. And then all of a sudden, it's like a huge thing that spins out of control. And a lot of times mobs, some people don't even know what the mob is about. They just feel the energy and they're like, I'm in.
Wait, there's a good old hanging going on over there or burning or something. Let's go after it.
Right. There's like a thing where people just kind of agree to what is happening, can feel energy and a momentum, and they're not aware of how it's affecting them. And so even like, I know when Corona happened, I was like, okay, I know that fear is going on.
Is going to be a dominant emotion that's happening for people around the country. It's not just looking and reading something on the internet. You're going to feel that because people are going to have reservations. And
so for me, I'm like, because I know that that's what's going to happen, I need to actively, like what you were talking about earlier, actively choose what I'm going to feed. Am I going to listen to things that feed that fear voice? And what I'm going to think and what I'm going to feel. Like I have to consciously choose to not just get in line. I almost like to think of it like a radio frequency that's going out, and you can tune into that frequency or not.
Yeah.
Like on your radio, you can go to that station or you can go to a different station.
Right.
It's easier said than done to be able to switch, but it is something that's so important because some people can feel crazy. I know that there's been times before I'll walk into a room and I'll be like, all of a sudden I'll feel suicidal and I'll be like, that's weird. That's how I felt as a kid.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling that way? And then I'll know like, okay, there's like depression here. It could be the place, like the actual room. Mm-hmm. It could be the people that are in the room. It could be something that had...
I mean, I've been in rooms where all of a sudden I feel like I want to act out in violence towards someone out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not my normal. I don't live in some violent emotion internally. I'm peaceful, chill about stuff. And I've even asked people like, hey, is there levels of violence that have taken place here in this space in your house? And they're like, oh, yeah. And they just begin to describe the level of violence that's gone on. I'm like, oh, I actually felt the space. Yeah,
because they talk about how rocks can actually absorb frequencies. That's why you have all these people that are like, rocks, crystals, whoa.
Me and my crystals.
But
get it, moon, get it. Charge it all up.
Get it, moon. But the concept is like, buildings can carry memories of emotions and nature can. And so there is something to be said to just be aware when you're in things. And I've noticed this.
And our goal here, let me say this. It could sound really foofy.
It could sound foofy.
Our goal isn't to be foofy inside of this. There's a lot of people that have conversations like this and they're all on another plane of being.
Right.
And they're all crazy. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, It's not about going off into some weird plane of being. Look, it's just, we're humans. We're more than just flesh. There is energy behind it. And there is something else going on. And all we're doing is creating a space of awareness about that for you guys. And
something that I think is important is some people are really intense emotional emitters.
Yes.
So there's different levels. Like because I'm such a feeler, a lot of my friends are low emotional emitters.
Yes, they are.
Like, and I wasn't aware of that in the beginning, but it makes so much sense. Because I'm like, if you feel things loudly, and what I mean is some people just broadcast emotions and it doesn't have to be loud. They could be silent and not saying anything.
And some of you might have that person in your family. You're like, oh my gosh. We know when Betty over here.
Why you got to pick on Betty?
Or George.
Yeah.
Is angry. We know they don't
The whole house feels it.
The whole house knows that they're pissed. They didn't throw anything over.
Nope.
They're just casually walking through the house. Some of you guys had parents like that specifically. Like it was like, yeah, when dad came in the house, you knew whether or not he had a bad day. He didn't kick a dog.
Nope.
He didn't say anything. It wasn't you just felt it.
Yes.
And you went on edge.
Yes. And so it's an important thing to be aware of when they are. I don't think it makes people bad. I'm a strong emotional emitter.
Yeah. I want to say this. I actually used to try to communicate through strong emotional emitting.
To me?
To anyone.
You did?
Because I didn't know how to practically have dialogue, so I didn't understand confrontation.
So
right?
you would just like
I didn't have any tools
anger.
for it. Mm-hmm.
You just like send them hate vibes?
Yes. In my gut, I would be like, I hate that you're doing this right now. And I would just like, and then people would be like, you feel like, and I'd have a smile on my face. And
totally.
I'd be like, do you hate me? Like, I don't know. I just felt like you hated me for some reason. And I'd be like, well, no, I'm a little frustrated, lying through my teeth.
Now, I do want to say this, though, because that opens a can of worms. Because then when people are like, I feel like they hate me, it must be true. That is not true because you have so many filters, so many triggers.
We're not saying that. Don't use this conversation
to assume and make up that you know what other people are feeling. Like, honestly, the way I learned that I was a feeler was through having so many questions and so much curiosity with people around me. So maybe I felt like, I remember 6 months with you where basically everywhere I went, I would feel the people we were around.
Yeah.
And so I never told them, this is what I feel. Is this what's going on? But I would just have conversations like, how are you doing? How's life going? And they would word for word tell me
verbatim
what I had said.
I would watch it and be like,
yeah.
That is exactly how you freaked out at me and the things you said.
Everybody listening is like, I'm not inviting her to my house. But I don't want you to feel my stuff.
Get her away from me.
But so I learned about it from over and over again, having people tell me things that confirmed. And even now, though I think that it's probably one of my strongest gifts, and I call it a gift because we've talked about it in ways that it can be unfun, which is you feel a lot
when you feel powerless and don't understand.
Yeah, it can feel powerless. But it's one of my strongest gifts, and yet I still don't assume ever. I don't assume ever with people. I collect feedback. So I'm like, let's say I go to a party and I might think, oh, I think I felt really sad all of a sudden being next to this person. If I can ask them, are you sad? I will ask them. If I can't, I can leave and be like, I don't think that was me, but I don't have to judge and assign.
I don't have to assign. That's the word I was going to say. Yeah, I don't have to assign this to someone.
Yeah, because assigning what you're feeling to somebody is very dangerous because there is the part of self-awareness is it could be one of your triggers.
I've walked into organizations, institutions with leadership inside of them. And I've gone up to people, especially in the past, and been like, oh, they're involved in ... They're involved in an affair. And I would give accurate assessments, especially when I was younger and didn't know how to curb that well. So I just kind of like,
communicate that.
I didn't know how to communicate it or investigate well. And there was a lot of stuff that I was very, very accurate. It got me into trouble sometimes. And at times it was very inaccurate.
Yeah.
And so that led me to become a really good investigator because ultimately my underlying goal in anything like this is to not become powerful over people. Right. But it's in order to
not pin responsibility for your emotions to other people. That's being a victim.
My goal is to learn how to love people well and be a powerful individual inside of myself.
Yeah.
So again, I've learned how to not have to assign that and be like, feels like that's what's happening there. It might be worth investigating.
Now, I will say that something, and one things that I do when I feel things is I pray. God, whoever's feeling sad in this room, like I just release hope and I release love and comfort. Like that's something that feels really powerful to me. Yeah. Would you send whoever's sad in this room angels of comfort? Like I think it's a really beautiful way. I'm always looking at how do I get into a frequency that's in the opposite so that I can actually be emitting the answer. And I'm not going to be fake and try to do that. But when I feel like I'm picking up on something around me, I'm going to be like, how do I engage truth?
And I know that when I feel someone who has deep shame around a pocket of something, I may actually even tangibly engage sharing a story of how I think that they're wonderful.
Yeah.
I might not even ask some questions. If I've gotten so good at my intuition, again, I'd more like to investigate, but maybe if I'm going to release healthy, good energy that Abby's talking about, I'm just going to come in an opposite perspective of what I might feel. And I might talk like about all the things I love about that individual.
Yes.
Or about the individuals in the room and just bring an atmosphere, create externally with my words, an atmosphere that is in complete opposition.
Yeah. Absolutely. I wanted to talk about being an emotional broadcaster and how that's awesome. Because it's also sad. Like when you're angry, everybody knows, or when you're sad, everybody knows. But the cool thing is you can bring so much life and joy and peace and hope. Like you get to emotionally broadcast powerful, beautiful emotions. And so that's one of the things like how you can walk into a fight there. I mean, we have so many stories of you. Like one of the things I love about Justin is wherever we're at, he's paying attention to what's going on around us. So he'll see like a fight in a parking lot and he'll just go walk over. Like I'm going to get involved if I need to. And he will literally emit peace that will calm situations down. Yeah. And there's something to being able to pay attention to. What am I choosing to release, choosing to engage in that allows for an atmosphere to be changed.
Yeah, ultimately, I think there are elements of our human design in its purest form that we are peace.
Yeah.
We are joy. We are kindness. That's part of who we are.
Made in God's image.
Yes, our identity. And it's stepping back into our true identity, our authentic identity, and going, no, I am this, and I want to fully allow this. I want this to be made manifest. Like, I want to become the fullness of who I actually am at my core. All of this other clutter of hatred and disdain and resentment and shame, these are a shadow over who us as humanity, our authentic identity truly is.
Yeah. Something I wanted you to talk about is how you can get codependent with this. Like, remember times when you would try to fix me because you could feel me?
Yeah. So a lot of times unconsciously, people don't know that they're feeling other people. Like, they wouldn't say that I feel other people just because they're not emotionally aware or using that type of language. But all of a sudden, they walk into a room and they feel the need to be playful and make things really happy.
Right.
Or they feel the need to change something up and they don't know why, but they're trying to do something. And the reason that they're trying to change someone else's mood or behavior isn't just because they have compassion on them, but it's because they're feeling them.
Right. And they're like, I don't want to feel this. I want to fix you.
So Abby I remember fear of finances was one that we had in the house. You had a tremendous fear of finances early on when we were together, and I did too in different ways. I think we had varying differences, different kinds of it.
We're just fear mongers in different ways.
But I felt your fear specifically in finances in a disastrous way, where it was so intense that it would make me like I would feel like I'm spiraling out of control.
Right.
And I would feel like I have to feel your feelings while it's happening. So I would try to help, like I'd try to bring truth as fast as possible about finances. Because if I could change your feelings about finances, I could go back to my posture of peace. And that's the other thing too, is sometimes in codependency with emotions, we learn to almost like when someone's in pain. And I think that this is a number one thing that happens. It's at the top of, we feel another person who's in pain. We want to get them out of that pain as fast as possible. We're not okay with them sitting in their misery or their pain. And it's not, again, just because we have compassion, we love them.
Right.
It's actually because I hate feeling the pain that they're in.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's okay for me to engage peace while they're not in peace. And people will do that inside of marriages. What? So people
spoken like somebody who went through this.
People will get in fights or arguments, and one spouse will go off, "Oh, I'm so angry you did this and I hate you." And the other spouse is in the other room thinking, "Oh my God, I have to have all this anxiety," instead of being like, "Yeah, well, they're mad, but I can be happy right now." Right. I don't have to engage that.
Absolutely.
I don't have to meet them. And in fact, there's something that people will say, it's kind of like a phrasing of, "Well, don't you care about me?" And you're like, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, look at me. I'm miserable right now and you're just happy." Don't you care about me? And so there's this lie that's sold to us culturally that if we love and we care about someone, we'll enter into the intensity of their emotions and their feelings in order to love them well.
And really what that's a cry for is, I want you to be attuned with me. We talk about attunement so much in the Compassion Project and how powerful it is as a healing thing. Attunement helps your brain get through the pain process. It's so healing when you learn to attune to others and you learn to be attuned with yourself. And when you allow other people to attune to you. But what we don't, and so everybody's crying out for that. Attunement is, I want to feel like I'm not alone. I want to feel like someone understands me and is with me and likes me and wants to be around me. But so it's false attunement to be like, you have to feel all of my emotions with me. In order for me to feel like we're together.
Absolutely.
And I think that, and so I do think it can, if you're not attuned with somebody, feeling happy while they're sad will actually feel like you're disassociating from them. And that is what feels really painful. But you don't have to do that. You can actually feel fine and peace on the inside and allow them to be in pain while still caring about them as a human.
Absolutely. Did you want to talk a little bit more actually about places like the hairstylist?
Well, I was talking about with my hairstylist, I was talking about how she said, I have so much more energy right now because I'm not in the salon all the time. And she's like, in the salon, so there's two different kinds. There's this energy that feeds you, and there's also this energy that drains you. And so it's busy. The hair dryers are on all the time. There's noise. There's sensory things happening.
There's people coming in and complaining about their lives.
There's a lot of people trying to get free therapy. And so she was saying how much not being able to work was like a great place of peace for her. And I actually think that this is one of the gifts of the corona, is that people are getting to kind of be in their own space and remember, I
almost get a natural reset.
Yeah, I get to kind of create my life how I want it to be. And so I know for me, I have an awareness, like when I go to big events, there is an energy that I love. It feeds me, but it also drains me because just having lots of people in the same room is a sensory stimulus. And I think people aren't self-aware of like, it's okay to know how you function and what you need.
Yeah.
And what you need to thrive. And that doesn't mean like, let's say, I know for Justin, actually huge auditoriums really affect him. He had like a neurological doctor talk about how sound in both ears affects the way that he processes. But that doesn't mean that you never go do things in big events. It just means you're aware of when you have it to give and when you don't.
Yeah. Very real.
Yeah. So I think that that's an important thing. I will say I can literally feel, and this would be valuable for feelers, like on Instagram, there are feelings, there is like thoughts that I think on Instagram that I don't think anywhere else. As soon as I think those thoughts, I get off. Like, and they're telltale for me. All of them for me have to do with comparison. What are you doing with your life? You're behind in everything. And if I don't go on Instagram, I don't feel that. And sometimes I hear like depression thoughts or like there's no hope thoughts. But literally it'll be like, I will hear the thoughts without even feeling them. It's like, it's broadcasting from it. Same with sometimes you watch movies and you feel like so sad after the movie. And that's because it can bring up your own pain, but also you can just experience feeling what's happening.
It's funny, like when you talk about that, when I used to live in LA and I would go to either 3rd Street Promenade down by Santa Monica, or I'd go on Rodeo Drive and I'd go through the clothing area section and I'd just walk, like I would feel fine about myself.
Totally.
I feel like I was handsome and everything else in life. Like it's not that I was perfect and over my own self-hatred, but I would literally all of a sudden have this weird insecurity, shame spiral in those places. And I'd walk by and see my reflection from the glass outside of these shops. And I'd be like, ugh, I don't even want to look at myself. I'd be like, that is so weird. I feel fine about looking at myself. Why is this happening right now? But there's actually a whole lot of energy of comparison and not enough in those spaces because people are having to deal with body image issues and insecurities about stuff.
And everything there is based on how you look. With so many
heavily
people.
Based on how you look.
And when you I think when you have, here's something interesting. When you have a lot of people who are in the same frequency, it makes the frequency stronger.
Yes.
Which is why it's kind of cool if you're in like a sport event and everybody's cheering, that feeling you have of everybody being in unity about joy. Like that is such an amazing, that's why people like love going to a Super Bowl celebration.
Yes.
Even if they miss the game, they're going out to the parade because they're like, there's a feeling of everybody's energy and emotions are all aimed in the same place. And the more you have those happen at the same time, the more you experience it. I think people who've gone to concerts have experienced that, sporting events, church services, where you feel like everyone is adding to something. But that can be true of the negative as well. So I would say whenever when I go to LA, I can like feel so beautiful before I get there. I know, okay, when I get to LA, I don't really shop in LA, but I don't really shop lots of places. But I know like when I get there, this is going to be the problem. And so I need to pay attention.
Yep.
To not listen to this. And I need to actually be proactive. I need to go in with, what do I love about me? What do I feel proud about me? What do I feel content in life with? How do I feel fulfilled? And one of my weapons for being a feeler is truth. Like I have to, it's the thing that grounds me.
Yeah.
No, the truth is I love my husband. No, the truth is I love my life. No, the truth is I have so much to be thankful for. No, the truth, and I will sit and declare, if I can feel an environment, I'll sit and declare until I can get back to my own truth, until I'm in charge of what I'm feeling and I'm not hooked into the radio station.
You know, it's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking about LA. There were two different bars that I used to visit in my early 20s. And one of them was a younger crowd in their early 20s that were out in LA, like living life.
Oh, yeah.
And there was another like hole in the wall bar that was like kind of dingy, and it was like older people, but it was interesting. Like I liked the old style because it hadn't been changed since the 60s and stuff.
Gosh.
But when I went into the one with the youth, there's a certain emotion of anything's possible could happen when I would go into that bar.
Right. Because all these people have this hope, this electric energy.
They haven't had their dreams burst yet.
Totally.
And broken by LA. And so I'd go in there and feel this enjoyment of it. And I would notice when I go to this other bar, I'd feel like, I'd walk out feeling like this sense of hopelessness. But again, I was
all
weird
the people whose dreams had been deferred and broken.
And they were exhausted by life because they were mostly in their like late 30s, early 40s on to their like 50s.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of pain that had accumulated in a lot of their hearts. And pretty much the only reason I kept going there is again because I liked like the way it was decorated, and I just thought it was kind of cool.
You're an old man in heart.
There was that element. But again, atmospheres.
I love that you said that, because I do want to say with LA, it was when I was in LA the whole time I lived there, and this is why I loved living there, there was this belief that anything could happen.
Yes, that's very unique to that city.
It was magic. I mean, it felt tangible in the air. Like, who knows what's going to happen with my life, but good possibilities could happen at any given moment.
And it felt like creativity could be easily sparked in that space, because there was this energy of being awakened inside to creating and as a whole over the community.
Absolutely. And so I want to say, like, because we talked about the negative, everything that has energy can do both things.
Yeah.
You can feel like I could feel the insecurity or the self-hatred or the status. I was like, I don't care about status. I've never cared about what kind of car, because it got broken in me by my childhood. Because we had the worst cars ever. And I was like, fine, I don't care. I would go to LA and all of a sudden be like, I need a better car. Like I'd be like, this is so weird. I never think this. If you think to yourself, I never think this way, I never feel this way, you're probably picking up on it.
Yeah, totally. So I want to talk real quick. We're kind of running out of time here, but I want to talk about those individuals who are listening to this and you're like, I don't feel anyone else or anything else. This is all foofy and doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I'm not saying this is you, but this just might be you. Oftentimes, because let me say this, we are a global community. Every human being is interconnected. Every human being emotes. Every human being is meant to be a receptor, because we are designed in and through relationship. We're designed for relationship.
For connection.
And connection.
This is the connected life.
This is the connected life.
With Justin and Abby.
That's me.
And me.
But because we're wired and designed that way, there is this element of reality of, if you don't feel anything, there's a good chance that you've learned how to separate yourself from your emotional being, and you've climbed into a space of logic inside of your head to survive emotions. And a lot of times people that I talk to like that, we dig around in their history and we find out that emotions were never safe.
Right.
The expression of emotions and that feeling of emotions didn't feel safe because someone was dominant and domineering with their emotions inside of their household, or there was a strong stance against emotions passed on generationally. And so that you've learned to
logic was exalted above
logic
emotions.
was an exalted thing. Like, emotions are just stupid. They're not real. You just need to get some logic. And so there's a potential for, like, as we're having this dialogue and you're not relating to it, you might actually be having a spotlight put on something. And it might be highlighting like, oh, yeah, I might actually be disconnected. I might be fully living in my logic. Now, as a side note, just let me say this. Logic and emotions are an equal gift.
Yeah,
meant to be lived out in the purity of balance.
Yep.
And when either one of those dominate the other one, and we get ourselves out of balance, there's very destructive behaviors, habits, and cultures that we create from that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say is, if you don't think that you're a feeler, you might not have been paying attention to it, but it probably exists. One of my best friends for years has been like, I'm not a feeler, I'm not a feeler, I'm not a feeler, which is, why I like her, because she doesn't exude feelings. She's a robot. But
if you're listening, you're a robot.
But I have always been like, no, I think you are. And it was just the things that she feels are so, like, the way she feels is not this overwhelming feeling.
Right.
But she might be in a room where she all of a sudden, like, just feels a little bit more anxiety, and she just thinks it's her.
Right.
So the longer we've been friends, the more she'll tell me about situations, and I'll be able to say, that doesn't sound like you. That sounds like, and then she'll be like, oh my gosh. She's mad because she was like so sure. But so you may feel things very minutely. And also most people think all of their emotions are theirs. And so if you've never thought about that, this is why it changed my life. Because when I was taught this, it helped me sort so many identity issues and emotional swings. I was able to understand so much more about myself. One last thing I wanted to say about codependency and being a feeler is typically in relationships, there's one person who feels less, and then the other person ends up being codependent with them. So like So in codependency, there's a narcissist and there's a giver. There's one person that like is a little bit more self-absorbed and one person that is a little bit more focused on the other person's emotions. And so oftentimes you'll find that the non-feeler ends up having control in the relationship because the feelers are spending all of their energy trying to fix the feelings they feel exuding from the non-feeler. The non-feeler doesn't feel them. They're just in their own little world. And they don't have to be narcissists. That's a strong word. Some people can just be like, and I had a friend who's just in a happy denial bubble. So they just they didn't know that people around them were sad. But all of the feelers were like, oh, I can feel you and I don't want you to be upset. And so one thing you have to do is feelers need to learn to not disassociate into other people's feelings.
Right.
And I did that my whole life. I could feel what you felt. And so I would know more about what you felt about something than about what I felt about something.
Yeah.
And the way to break codependency is not to throw all those people out of your life, but to actually...
Don't want to hurt your back.
But to actually begin to be like, no, I'm going to check in with me. What am I feeling? Not just what am I tuning into them for? What is going on inside of me? What do I think about this? What do I want for this? And and I see this happen a lot with givers, Enneagram 2s. There's multiple different types of personalities. They know way more about the needs of other people, the emotions of other people, and they know nothing about what's going on inside of them. And you have to actually crawl back into your own body and learn how to feel your own emotions. And when you are okay with your own emotions, codependency will break.
So as we wrap this up, there are some of you out there, specifically those who are very hyper aware of your ability to feel. And you're feeling a lot all the time. And this is an invitation to begin to figure out what is mine. I want to figure out my plumb line, like who I am. And this is a piece of homework to go, what are actually the things that I've overcome and what is my normal when I'm not thrown in all kinds of crazy situations or around a bunch of people? And how can I maintain my normal?
Yeah.
What does it look like for me to go as far as like, I have inner dialogues when I'm around people that I can tell that they're in hyper anxiety or sadness. And internally I'll say, I give them permission to feel this. I do not have to take the weight of this on. I'm not bad for not feeling the depth of their sadness or the depth of their anger. I release myself from over empathizing with their circumstance right now. And all of a sudden I can get myself at a healthy distance without disconnecting from the humanity of that person.
If you connect more to other people's emotions than yourself, it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
So what you just did is how you can stay in control in the sense of, in a healthy way,
of yourself,
your own self.
And what it also is an invitation to is to stop controlling others.
Yes.
You don't have to control someone's anger, sadness, disappointment, whatever it is, when you can manage yourself and find your own peace. And you, again, a reminder, part of this conversation again is empowerment.
Yep.
If I can become self-aware, then I can become empowered. Not only empowered in myself, but I can begin to be the atmosphere setter.
Yeah, the one who turns the thermostat to 70.
And
or 66 if you're Justin.
66 is a good temperature when you're cozying up in bed at night. So, do you have any other homework for them as we wrap this up?
Nope.
Here's what I want to say. If you guys are getting anything out of this, I know you've heard the spiel before, but rate, review, subscribe, and share.
Really helps.
That helps give promotion to the podcast. Share your reviews on iTunes. It's a big deal. If you haven't done it yet, go to iTunes, write your review, because people come and they see it and they go, oh, there's something special about this. I want to tune in. And we've had a lot of people write us and say, I was just reading through reviews on iTunes, saw it and thought, I wonder what that is. And it began them on a journey of finding healing inside of their life.
The other thing is we do this podcast for free. We want to help as many people as possible. But if you want to jump into our world, we have so many things where we take people on. This is what we do. We're coaches. We help people learn how to be powerful with their emotions. We do consulting, we train consultants, and we have courses to help people learn how to navigate their system. Right now we have the Compassion Project, which is really good because it helps you learn how to have attunement, validation, and how to be attuned to yourself. Yeah. Like I was just talking about people not overly connecting to other people, but we also have a bunch of other stuff. So either buy the Compassion Project and also join our mailing list, and we can send out all the goodies to you.
And you can get to that at stumvalconsulting.com. Now, last but not least, here's how I'm going to end this podcast. I'm going to come over there and I'm going to grab you and I'm going to tackle you and I'm going to tickle you.